Wait, not that one.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
All right, that music alone says it. We're talking Halloween 3. Welcome to our 4th episode. Couple of new things today. First off, it's the very first time we have Mr. Guest Host Jay Robbins here, the one and only Funktastic.
Hello, hello.
And Mom Thulu is back after her last week being off.
Yeah, that's me.
Yep, that's me. And we are talking Halloween 3, otherwise known as Where's Mike Myers?
Like, couldn't
Dude,
they
that's
have
how you're-
named it something else? Come on.
That's how you're starting it off, huh? Just starting it off.
Always, you got to go with the elephant in the room. And a lot of people, I didn't know this until I researched it. It was supposed to be an anthology. It wasn't supposed to all be Mike Myers.
Well, the thing is, after the original Halloween, John Carpenter's original vision for the Halloween movies was to be an anthology series every year or every 2 years. But because of the success of Halloween, he was forced to do Halloween 2, which he wasn't really happy with, but he definitively killed off Mike Myers because he was so popular. I mean, if you've ever seen Halloween 2, he definitively kills Michael in that movie, and Dr. Loomis, and pretty much everybody dies in that movie so that they wouldn't be able to come back. And so they went on and did Halloween 3, which, of course, everybody said exactly what you started the show with, is Where's Michael Myers?
But I think...
Yeah.
I'm not old enough to remember this, and I actually a few years older than you, so you wouldn't remember when it came out. I wonder, did they not illustrate that point well? Did they not go out
No,
and say this is supposed to be an anthology?
Even Tommy Lee Wallace, I've watched a lot of documentaries on this movie, and everybody that worked on it, even Tommy Lee Wallace, who directed it, who has always worked with John Carpenter. He was on the original Halloween, I think. I think it might have been. I can't remember exactly what his role was. He did some makeup effects stuff or something like that. But anyway, he was brought on to direct the third one, and even he said that if they would have just called it like Season of the Witch: a Halloween story, it probably would be looked at with much more fondness to this day. Because there are people out there like me who actually love this movie, don't care that it's, Mike Myers is not in it. It's not even set in the same universe. I mean, it's set in our world where the Halloween movies exist, because you see in Halloween 3, the big, he's watching TV in the bar, and you see an advertisement for the original Halloween movie.
In the movie too, you see the action when they're doing the horathon at the end. Halloween is the movie that's playing, so I almost want to say Mike Myers was there. He's right there.
I was gonna say, wasn't it like the commercial interrupted the Halloween movie? Maybe, I don't know.
Well,
they obviously had the rights to that movie, so when they put a
clearly,
on the screen, they're like, we'll use this one.
Well, what it was is the whole point of this movie is Connell Cochran, who's the main bad guy. He develops these masks with magic and technology, which is what this movie is about. It's the mixture of magic and technology, and he creates these masks because he's a witch, he's a warlock, and he's thousands of years old. And he wants to play a joke on the children because Halloween has become something that it was never intended to be. He hates the fact that children go around begging for candy, when originally Halloween was, it was pagan rituals and all kind of stuff, because the veil between the living and the dead was so thin because of All Hallows Eve and everything. He wants to play a joke on the kids, and the joke is he gets all these kids to buy these masks from the Silver Shamrock Company, which he runs. And when these kids watch the commercial, their heads are going to be turned. If they're wearing the mask and they're watching the commercial, their heads are going to be turned into bugs and crickets and snakes, and all the children will die. And but that commercial is playing during the airing of Halloween the movie within Halloween 3 the movie. So it's kind of a meta thing.
All right, so the other way in which this is different is that this is the first property that I didn't personally bring in, that I didn't be like, I'm defending this movie. And it's also the first time we've had a debate, because the nature of the show is we're defending stuff against trolls. So we don't usually have a debate back and forth. But in this case, Mom Thulu was not approving of the movie. So I think it would be kind of cool if Mom Thulu could kind of walk through some of her gripes, and the master, Mr. Robbins, can answer them for us.
Okay.
So essentially, I'm invited because I'm the troll.
You're a much cuter troll.
Is that what you're saying?
A much better looking troll.
Okay, so, oh my god, where do I start? Overwhelming. I'll say what I did like about the movie before I start anything, okay? Let's start with that. It was like this weird mashup of like magic and technology, which made it kind of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
In essence. So, that was cool, because you rarely see stuff like that. I like that they had an explanation for it other than just we're magic witches. Woo!
Yeah.
They had an explanation for the little microchips and all the masks, and that was that it was made out of fragments of a Stonehenge, whatever you call it, big Stonehenge thing.
Yeah.
A rock.
Well, that's actually, if anybody's never seen it, what they did was they stole one of the rocks from Stonehenge and smuggled it to Northern California, where this
one of the bad spoilers you see in movies, where like there's this random news thing going on, like stone missing, and then everyone who's seen a movie in the last 20 years is like, that's coming back later.
Yeah.
Right.
But the thing is, the guy's watching it in that gas station in Northern California. Like, does he get BBC there in Northern California? Is that what he's watching?
In the 80s. It's not like, cable now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gas station dude had a satellite.
Yeah, probably.
So
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted
No, you're not interrupting. So that was an interesting plot part, I think, is that they had the actual an actual explanation for it. I did enjoy that it was an original explanation. But then for me, the movie from start to finish was a dumpster fire. I'm sorry. I know. There are certain movies out there that I start watching them and I'm going, what the hell am I watching? This movie was a lot like Clockwork Orange to me, and that I hated it that much.
I think, and I don't mean to interrupt, I think if you're a John Carpenter fan as far as a filmmaker and storyteller, even though he didn't direct this movie has John Carpenter's fingerprint all over it as far as, the music.
Absolutely right.
The cinematography, like John Carpenter has a certain cinematography about his movies where his movies seem low budget, but they're shot beautifully.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that right there. You're right. It was quality work for a John Carpenter movie, which I am a John Carpenter fan. I just hated it. I really did.
It's not for everybody. Like I said,
no,
it's a weird mixture of, it's something that had never been tried before, and I don't really think has been tried since. Like sci-fi mixed with like magic and horror. More sci-fi than, there's not a lot of horror in the movie. It's all in the tension and the like the atmosphere of the movie. And honestly, that's when I watched this as a kid, the first time I saw it, I think it was the late 80s, and the local Fox station was brand new. And on Sunday nights, they used to do this thing called Crown Dodge Chrysler Theater, where a local car lot bought out like a 2-hour slot on Sunday nights, and they would play like sci-fi movies and horror movies. And this was the first time I saw it, and I was not a horror fan as a kid. Like I hated horror movies when I was a kid. Gremlins. Can I cuss on here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Gremlins fucking terrified me when I was a kid.
I'm gonna say this every time Gremlins comes up. Fuck Zach.
Dude,
Fuck Zach.
I'm
and
not-
Kind bars.
I am not kidding. That movie made me sleep with the lights on until I was 13 years old.
Oh,
Like I hated horror movies, but when I saw this for the first time, there was just something about it that like I loved the atmosphere of the movie, and I loved the fact that it's a horror movie without any horror movie in it. There's
you're absolutely right.
There's no jump scares, there's no like anybody, there's no blood, there's nobody being killed. I mean, there's a few horror things in it, like when the lady when she's messing with the little microchip and she gets blasted in the face.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
there there is blood in it.
Terrible.
So like in the beginning, the guy who, I don't know, did he crash at the gas station? I don't know, but he collapses at that shop, and this weird gloved man walks into the hospital where he's at and just gouges his eyes out. He's just like, "Bleh," and then goes wipes it on the curtain.
Every time I saw those guys, if any of you are Firefly fans, the only thing I could think of is 2x2 hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Hands of blue.
It's weird that you mention that because that's what they remind me of too. But Conal Cochran, like I said, it's not explained in the movie, but but because of his dialogue and everything, you come to learn that he's, a couple of thousand years old. He's a witch or a warlock. So over the centuries, he's mixed technology and magic. So he creates these androids basically that do his bidding for him. And that, he sends these androids out to like kill people that stumble across the secret of what he's doing, which is what happened at the beginning of the movie. The guy that's running away from those guys is actually the girl's dad, who goes looking like, who is what's her name? I got it pulled up.
Her name was
here.
Ellie.
Yeah, Ellie. Her real name is Stacy Nelkin, and Tom Atkins, who plays Dr. Chalice in the movie. The two main characters, they go in search of, because her dad ends up dying. He goes into the hospital after being chased by these guys and he's holding on to one of these masks. So apparently he went to the Silver Shamrock factory, found out what was going on, tried to escape, and they hunted him down and eventually found him and killed him at the hospital. So enter Ellie and Dr. Chalice. They go on an adventure to try to find out exactly what's going on. And for some reason, I'm not really sure why this alcoholic doctor surgeon is playing detective, but it works for the movie.
Right, but he's also into smashing younger women because,
nothing. It's a quintessential horror movie of the time. Quintessential Carpenter. That, I'm so distraught. My father's dead. Please help me. Oh, but yeah, we're definitely going to have sex tonight.
I brought a negligee to the motel. Would you like to come into bed with me?
That's why I love it so much. It's so unearned. It just really happens out of the blue.
And you're like, literally drunkenly falls right into it.
Yeah, she's like, she goes, "Where would you like to sleep?" And he goes, "Do you really have to ask?" And then they start like making out, and I was like, "Well, who saw that coming?"
Literally, no chemistry between them, no dialogue that led to that.
None.
It's time for the sex scene now.
It is time to smash. Yeah.
Like I said, it was not earned. There was nothing leading up to it, and he's like 50 years older than she is.
Oh my god! Yes. And can we talk just for a second about, like, Tom Atkins is, like, the stereotypical 80s guy. Like, every single 80s movie that you see, he's like Tony Todd. He just pops up in them.
Well, he was your horror movie, Tom Selleck back then. He was like, he was like your go-to guy for horror movies back in the 80s. And he was in his 40s at the time, because the guy's like, how old is he now? He's like 85?
Like
is he still alive?
Yeah. Yeah, he's still alive.
I'm just assuming everyone in that movie that was over the age of 20 has died by now.
He was born in 1935. November 13th. So he just had a birthday yesterday. If you're somehow listening, Mr. Atkins, happy birthday. But what's 1935? That would be 60, 65 plus 21 be 86. He's 86 years old.
Holy shit.
Yeah, well, I know
So
his
he was
mom
in it.
is dead.
He was
Yeah.
my age at the time. So he was like 45 at the time when this movie was made.
He's smashing some girl who's like 19.
Yeah, she's like 19 in college.
Yeah.
You know what the
Okay.
funniest part of the movie to me is when she goes to ask him, because there's like, this movie is weird because it takes place over the course of like a week.
Yeah.
After she meets him at the hospital to identify her father, it's like 2 or 3 days later. There's the scene where he's in the bar and he's looking at the TV, and there's like the commercial for Halloween, and the commercial for Silver Shamrock comes on, which you're gonna hear like 85 times during the movie. He's like, please change the channel. And then she comes in and she says, Dr. Chalice, he's like, yeah. She's like, the nurses told me that I could find you here. Like, this dude is getting drunk at like 9 o'clock in the morning on like a Tuesday.
Not only that, but the nurses knew. They're like,
Right.
"Yeah, looking for the doc, bar down there."
And he has so many inappropriate relationships
He really
in
does.
this movie.
He's like
smacking the nurse's
constantly.
ass, making
Yeah.
jokes with them all. Like,
He's
through today's
constantly
lens, it's
on the
this guy's
phone.
getting sued. They're
Well,
he's-
tweeting me too right now.
Dude, he's divorced. He's got
Yeah.
2 kids, and he's at work. He's like smacking nurses on the ass. The coroner, the coroner's helper, or what, I don't remember what her
She
name
wasn't
was.
actually a corner, but he talked her into it because she was a blonde. You know, she's the chick.
And she's like, and they're talking about like going out on a date, so
Mm-hmm.
they're smashing, and you're like, God, this dude gets around, man.
Yeah, Dr. Dan Chalice gets around, and he like fights with his ex-wife like 4 times through the course of the whole thing.
Was John Carpenter or some other writer on this movie like going through a divorce? Because
Yes, I think he was getting divorced from what's her name? She's the co-producer on Halloween.
Oh God,
What was her name?
I'm gonna Google it.
I don't know, but the whole ex-wife character just felt like a shout
It's-
out to someone.
Oddly personal, right?
But yeah,
Oddly
actually, at the
personal.
time, because he was getting divorced from her, the co-producer of Halloween, he and her were together. This is around the time that he left her for Adrienne Barbeau.
Oh yeah, because it says Sandy King was her name. Sandy King.
Is that
No,
it?
no. So I don't think he was divorcing her because it looks like the only spouse he's actually had was Adrienne Barbeau. So and they
I
married
thought-
in 1979, but maybe it was like I don't know, a girlfriend. I don't know.
I don't know. That
Um,
character felt personal.
No, Deborah Hill is who
There
it
you
was.
go.
He was with, yeah, Deborah Hill.
There you go.
Or
Yeah.
maybe he was with Adrienne Barbeau and left her for Deborah Hill. I can't remember which way it went,
No,
but he
I
left
think-
one of them for the other.
I think you're right because it says that Adrienne Barbeau, he divorced her in 1984. So that's right on track
Yeah.
with this. So, like this movie was made in 1982 and divorces in the 80s took
Yeah.
years. They really did. Like
Yeah.
now you can walk into the courthouse and pay them like $200 and they'll go,
Yeah.
Grand Poobah, you are now divorced,
Yeah, back
It's-
then, they're like getting divorced was like a 3-year process.
Right? And you had to go through lawyers. Oh god,
Yeah.
it's bringing back memories.
You had to go
Childhood
through a
trauma.
separation phase, like
Right?
all that kind of stuff.
Well, because that
Right.
tracks completely because that whole character felt personal.
It really did.
Every scene
really
she's
did.
in, she's nagging him about something, and fairly, because this doctor,
Yeah.
not just an alcoholic surgeon, he's also like a shitty dad. He just keeps blowing off his family, and until the end of the movie, you don't even know that it's like life, it's world changing. So it's not
Right.
like he's doing the hero's journey. He's just like, this cute girl wants me to go with her, so we'll
Yeah.
do Halloween later, kids.
I'm gonna go because I really want to smash her. Like
And one of the funniest parts too, there's a part where he's on the phone with his wife, and he's leaving town with Ellie to go to this other town that's like, I don't know, 30 minutes away
Mhm.
to go to just see this Silver Shamrock factory. And he's talking to his wife on the phone. All you hear on the other end, you don't hear the other end of the conversation. All you hear is, and he's like yelling at her about how he's going to a doctor's conference or something for the weekend. And then he just hangs up on her. And then the camera pans over, and he's got a 6-pack of Miller Lite. He just grabs the 6-pack and runs to the car.
You gotta have some roadies.
Man, the 80s were a wild time, weren't they?
Gotta need my road beers.
Well, so on the subject of Ellie, though, that we're talking about, she kind of just ends up in that hospital out of nowhere. She's like, I'm here to identify the body, but nobody knew that man had a daughter, right? And like the minute she shows up, I'm going, there's something off about you, you know? Like, she's just...
Someone
They did know.
contacted her.
Wait, I never noticed that before. Did he? Because everybody in that town knew who he was. I mean, he had a shop in that town. But did they know that he had a daughter? They should have known he had a daughter.
I feel like Momfulu, the hospital didn't know, but the cops that were there knew. The cops had brought her in.
They literally she just shows up, and she's like, I'm here to identify my father's body. It doesn't show like anybody's talking about his daughter beforehand or anything. She's just suddenly there, and you're just like, okay.
Maybe we give it to Jay to small town syndrome, and they just...
Well, but you have to also
to be
understand...
Fair, a car exploded in the parking lot that night. So...
That's true. Yeah. And John Carpenter's good about those sort of things where things just happen. You know, they're just like, bing, there it is. But yeah, I felt off about her like from the beginning, and I was like, you are the red herring, ma'am.
So at
and
the end,
she turns out to be...
Towards the end of the movie, she actually turns out to be another one of Connell's creations, android. But did she get switched at some point to where she was human, and then they kidnapped her and then replaced her with an android and then killed the real her? Or was she an android the whole time?
I think she was an android the whole time. That's what I got from it.
I'm gonna go the other way, because if she was an android the whole time, why in the world would she suck the doctor in and expose all that?
I know,
because
that's what
she had
I'm
a
thinking.
job to do. That's it was just a really good creation. Okay.
Well,
okay.
maybe,
she was the early version of the fembots from Austin Powers.
Yeah, but if she would have never shown up, then nobody would have known a thing.
That's
about
true.
anything, and Connell Cochran would have just gone through with his
that's true,
with his plan uninterrupted.
So that's a good argument of she could have been an actual person, because I mean at some point during the movie, whenever she's strapped down, it's like towards the end there, they do say that she's in there, and he said something like she's in processing, like Connell Cochran did. I don't remember if processing was the exact word, but it's basically what he said is like she's laying in this room in processing. So maybe that was her like transition to these weird bile spitting robots.
What I'm wondering is when they're talking about processing, and that was like a big deal when they asked him what's processing, and he's like, oh, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and wouldn't let him go in there. Like, is processing? I mean, is he taking actual real live people and like hollowing out their, like basically skinning them and replacing their innards with android parts?
Bits.
It seems like a plausible theory. Because
hydraulic fluid
has something to do with the mask, but then you see it really has nothing to do with the masks at all.
Yeah.
No, it's just pretty much has to do with Connell Cochran himself just being, witchy. It has an interesting plot points for sure. I just wasn't a fan. I just did not like it. But I watched the whole thing from start to finish. I even put my phone down so I wasn't on TikTok when I got bored. So I have to admit there are some really cool things in the movie that I enjoyed. Like there are several Easter eggs in there. I don't know if you knew this or not, but there's a part when they get to the town and they check into the motel and it gets dark and there's all of a sudden there's like a car driving with like a speaker, or maybe the loudspeaker's like on a pole or something, and it starts going, the curfew is in effect. The curfew is in effect. Please return to your homes.
That's
All
Jamie Lee
activities are indoors.
by the
That's
way.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
what you were gonna
and
say?
she's the voice of the telephone service provider too. So you see like little bits of that. Like she's, we see Michael Myers in there. That was an Easter egg. We have Laurie Strode's voice as the curfew announcer and stuff like that. So there's like these little Easter eggs of all the other things that Carpenter has done in that movie, which was really cool, which I thought. I love Easter eggs.
See, that's like I'm a horror movie fan, from a high school when I actually got into horror and started to understand horror. And like as a kid, I hated horror movies, but as I got older, one of the things that I like most is atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need jump scares. I don't need gore. I just need a good atmosphere, and that's why I'm drawn to things like, for like video games. I like things like Resident Evil. The early Resident Evil games. I love that atmosphere. I love John Carpenter because of the atmosphere in his movies, and that small town that they get to, where Connell Cochran has basically taken over the whole town, and people are. It's like, they talk about the town as they're driving to it, which is weird because people just don't do that. But
Oh my God, I'm gonna pause you for just a second because I remember that now. Like he was reading it off like he had the internet in front of him.
yeah,
Like where was
was
he
that
getting this
on?
information? He's just sitting there in the
I
car,
know.
like they have a population of 525 people, and like, how do you know this? How?
Yeah, was that on like a map they got at the gas station or something? Like,
He literally was reading its Wikipedia page 20 years before Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so they
I
get to
interrupted.
this, they get to this town, and it's one of those weird atmospheric towns where they get there, and it's the people are
Strange.
very strange, and there's strange things going on. It feels there's people there, but it feels empty and claustrophobic. And I love things like that. That's why I love the weird town he goes to in the Mouth of Madness. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It's kind of a John Carpenter staple. He's really good at that, about making a town feel alive, but very ominous.
The homeless area, and they live.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's
And
exactly.
it's funny you say that, Jason, because that is where the movie got me. Because in the beginning, I was with Mom, like, this is campy, this is, but it just has a creepy vibe when you get to that town. And to me, that's when I got, ooh, what's happening here now?
And I know it's not a John Carpenter movie, but the original, the very first Children of the Corn movie has that
Oh my
vibe
God.
too.
Children of the Corn, I can't even talk about that movie. That movie like lives in my nightmares. I have been a horror fan since I was 3 years old. My mom found me camped out beside the couch while her and her friends had like a movie night with all the lights out, and they were watching American Werewolf in London.
Oh,
and I was
yeah.
literally there hiding beside the couch, like with the blanket up to my nose, just terrified, but I couldn't look away. And I've just been a horror fan ever since. There used to be a lady that lived across the street from me that babysat me, and she was a horror fan. So like from the ages of like 5 until 16,
You were inundated.
she was like, I'd go over, I'd be like, can we watch a scary movie? And she'd be like, is it okay with your mom? And I was like, yes. And it was not okay with my mom because I would be up all night having nightmares. But we watched so many like good movies. So whenever Jester asked me to be on this, I said, okay, I don't think I've ever seen Halloween 3, but once I started watching it, I realized I had seen it before sometime in the 90s. And I didn't like it then. I still don't like it, but I have to agree with you guys that he really does have a panache for really like bringing this like creepy, ominous atmosphere to like a story set that he's created.
Like
no
over the face, so obvious. It's just kind of a subtle.
You're right, because they show up and then there's the guy at the gas station who's like super friendly and everything, he's like this Irish dude and he's like blah 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 and everything's fine, and then there's a family, and then there's that weird lady that gets zapped by the chip and everything, and everything seems like really cohesive and stuff, and then things just start to get weirder, and you're just like why is there a curfew saying that people have to go inside at 8:30?
Yeah, that's really when the movie takes off in its weirdness once they get to the town. Like, things are weird, but you don't really know what's going on. And there's another thing I wanted to talk about too. Like, you don't really know what's going on until you get to the end of the movie, when everything kind of gels and you kind of understand what's going on. The whole people hate the opening sequence to the movie, but if you look at it from this perspective, like you look at the original Halloween movie, it's the carved pumpkin. You start off with a tight shot of it and you pull out, and while the music's playing, and you get that shot of the pumpkin. But this movie, it's different. It's like weird electronic music, like ominous, John Carpenter style, like synth music, and you're seeing these like geometric shapes, like on a really close up shot, like on an old CRT monitor. And what you're seeing is the pixels. So the whole time you're seeing this, you're like, what am I looking at?
Right.
And then when you finally, towards the end, you see that it pulls out enough to where you see the whole picture, and it's a computer monitor with jack-o'-lantern on it, and it's kind of like, you're seeing the technology up close until you pull out and see that the technology has turned into this jack-o'-lantern, which is, Halloween. It's magic. It's ghosts, it's goblins, but it's got that technical electronic element to it.
Right, that seemed high tech in the 80s,
Oh, at the time, that was top of the line. We looked
Yeah,
I'm
at
that
saying
was-
like this movie was made when I was a year old, but yeah.
Can I say too?
It was-
Talk about Carpenter. Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Carpenter is the only guy who scared me as a kid. I grew up. You were talking about your credence as horror movie fans. When my parents got divorced, every summer Dad took us to do Nightmare on Elm Street movie, because remember they crapped him out like every summer for a while.
Oh yeah.
Never got scared at Nightmare on Elm Street. Never got scared watching Friday the 13th, because I could rationalize my way out of it. Like, well, my parents didn't kill this guy. I'm good. I've never seen Crystal Lake. I'm fine. John Carpenter, It. First movie that at this point I thought I was a badass. I'm like, I've watched all these movies. Bring it. And that.
Are you talking about The Thing?
The Thing? Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
The Arctic with the.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That movie scared the crap out of me, and that's John Carpenter.
Yeah, that is a scary movie. No, you're right.
It's probably one of the most perfect horror movies ever made.
I could agree with that one. He is a master of horror, and that one just, it really did just kind of hit you right in the gut. I saw it when I was like, I don't know, really
You wanna
young,
talk
but
about
like,
feeling isolated and alone? That
Right.
movie
right.
is it. Yeah, that's the perfect John Carpenter. Like,
It's probably not the first time that concept, but it's the first time I've experienced that concept where you have the hidden so you don't know who to be afraid of. You
yeah,
don't know, has he been converted or not, and it's been done so many times now, but that was the first time I saw that. So good.
yeah.
But sorry, I
That movie.
didn't want to pull us off of this movie. We were talking about John Carpenter. So
No,
but I
he's
just wanted-
amazing.
But I just wanted to say that I think the reason, and I've talked to Derek about this. I've talked to Joey Image about this, who's a huge Halloween fan. He hates this movie. Most people I know hate this movie. This was actually the first Halloween movie I ever saw.
Oh, really?
So I was not tainted by the whole where's Micheal Myers, like all that kind of stuff. I don't even remember if I had even known what the Halloween franchise was at this time, because it was roughly 1987 or 88 when I saw this movie for the first time. So it was only a few years old at the time, but I was 11 years old, 10 or 11 when I saw this movie for the first time, and I didn't have that bias when I saw it, and I've just always loved this movie ever since.
This is totally a movie where you either love it so much or you just absolutely hate it. You just can't even stomach it again. And that's, I'll be happy if I never have to see it again. I'm sorry. It just wasn't for me.
See,
That's okay.
I would agree with you until the village. And once they get to the village, to me, the whole movie takes off, and
but
that's where I got sold. That's where I got because I'm a huge and Jay and I have bonded over this. I'm a huge They Live fan.
yeah.
And
That's a good
where
movie,
I
though.
started feeling the parallels is when you
Yeah.
got that city and the little town and stuff. It just
that's when they
what
the introduction. They get to the town, and then the introduction of Connell Cochran. Because as soon as you see that guy, you know he shows up because there's this. He's talked about in hushed tones. You know, like Connell Cochran. You know this that he runs the town and all this stuff, and then he shows up when the lady blasts herself in the face by messing around with the microchip, you know, instead of taking her to a hospital, which, you know, Dr. Chalice is a doctor, he runs over and he's like, I'm a doctor. And they, you know, they kind of hold him back. And Connell Cochran's like, he's like, where are you taking her? He's like, oh, we have the best facilities at the, you know, at the factory. And it's like, you have you have medical facilities at your weird factory that looks like a milk plant.
and the ER/surgeon doc was totally okay with that. Like, yeah. Take her to the factory. That sounds like the best.
If I was as a doctor, I'd have been like, well, can I go? Is there anything I can do to help? Or
But you have to remember that he was like 3 sheets to the wind at that point. So you know.
Yeah.
He probably
was
couldn't
also
hold a pencil, let alone a stethoscope.
He was also undercover at
That's
the time.
true.
And like, why are you undercover? He doesn't know who the fuck you are anyway.
Random doctor number 5. Okay, he's not looking for you.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of flaws in this movie. Don't get me wrong,
Sure.
but that's with every '80s horror movie. I mean, you could sit here and pick apart every single '80s horror movie there is, but if you look at this movie as more of a sci-fi movie, like a weird sci-fi with horror elements, I would not classify this really as a horror movie because there's not really a lot of horror in it.
No, and the writing, but that's more just Carpenter's writing.
It's true.
Yeah,
you have to respect the craft for sure. It was definitely different. It was a different horse. You know what I mean?
To me,
but it would have been
perfect for this show because
it would have been interesting if the movie did make money. You know, they made more Halloween movies afterwards, but if they would have stuck with the original plan and we'd have gotten a different Halloween story every year at Halloween, you know, a Halloween story movie, what we could have gotten after that, like, would it still be going on to this day? I mean, would we be on, you know, Halloween 40 with a different Halloween story every year? Like, it's just kind of, I feel like it's a huge missed opportunity. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Mike Myers story. I mean, I'm glad they kind of wiped those 80s, early 90s Halloween movies out of the canon because they're not good, but I don't know. I feel like we really missed an opportunity to have a really cool movie come out every single year based on a Halloween story.
No, you're absolutely right there. Like, some of the best movies out there, some of the best, I will call them Halloween movies more than just a horror movie, but some of those anthology movies like Trick or Treat. Come on, Trick or Treat is fantastic.
Yeah.
And then there's some of the other ones that are just like little stories within. You're right. It was a totally missed opportunity, especially for the time. But everybody in the 80s was all about slashers, you know? Slashers are monsters. That was the 80s.
I think you're right. I think maybe that movie was about 15 or 20 years ahead of its time.
If he'd have made it in the 90s, it would have... Because, like, in the 90s, that's when, like, witchcraft became a big thing. Because there was the Satanic Panic right at the end of the 80s. It kind of led into that whole thing. You're right. It was done too early.
If you'd, you know, because you had movies like The Craft and all that kind of stuff in the 90s dealing with witchcraft. Like you said, witchcraft was big in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
If they would have made this movie 10 years later, we probably would have gotten that, you know, Halloween series. And that's the problem. If they would have just called it Season of the Witch, a Halloween story, I mean, every single year.
I think you hit the nail on the head a few minutes ago. It made money. If they had just been... If they had stuck to their guns, this one was the bumpy one. I think if they had done 4, be it in the anthology and not bringing back Mike Myers, I think it would have succeeded. Because I think at that point people would have realized what was going on.
Yeah, I think they just kind of dropped the ball with what they were trying to do. And everybody admits that. John Carpenter admits that. Tommy Lee Wallace admits that. Everybody involved admits that they really dropped the ball when it came to letting people know that this is, Halloween is not going to just be about Michael Myers. You saw Halloween 2. Michael Myers is dead. He's not alive anymore. He's gone. So we're going to go in a different direction. If they would have done that, I think people would have been way more receptive to it. But I think just dropping this on people and calling it Halloween 3, everybody's going expecting Michael Myers, and there's no Michael Myers to be had.
Yeah.
And you got Tom Atkins. you get Tom Atkins instead of Michael Myers. So.
And I'm sorry, Ellie was cute, but compared to '80s Jamie Lee, sorry. But
yeah,
I mean, it's a good place to wrap up. I think Mom Thulu, sorry, this is a perfect Jester's Court property because it has flaws. We talk about flaws in all our episodes, but overall, it was fun to watch. I had fun watching it.
And that's the thing. I always tell people that have never seen seen this movie, you're either going to love it or hate it, but go in knowing, like, don't just completely separate Halloween from it, like the Halloween franchise.
Just take it out of your mind completely, because if you go in with that idea that you're going to see some slasher flick, you're going to be sorely disappointed. You're going to be disappointed about 5 minutes in.
Crushing heads and, like, at one point taking some dude's head off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was like the one really gruesome death, and it was cool because it was. I like the Carpenter was big about the arterial spray, like in some of his slasher movies. There was like this arterial spray, so when like guy loses his head, there's just like this big gust of blood that just goes everywhere, and you're just like, whoa. Anyway.
But yeah, it's definitely something you have to go in knowing that it's going to be a weird movie. But if you go in knowing it's weird, I think you're going to and just enjoy it for what it is. I think you're going to have a lot better time with it.
I like those kind of movies. We talk about They Live, this movie. Have you seen Six String Samurai? I don't know if you've ever seen Six String Samurai, but it is just weird as hell.
Yeah.
But great.
Yeah, I mean...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go.
I was just going to say, if you're into those weird kind of 80s cult movies, like if you're into things like Buckaroo Banzai, or you're into They Live, things of that nature, this movie kind of fits right in that pocket for me. Yeah.
No, you're right. Before you close the show out, since Jay here said that he was a fan of like the creepy, not really horror, but like the creepy atmospheres, I was going to make a suggestion to him and to the viewers. There's this really good movie. It was made in 1974. One of my favorite zombie movies ever. It's called Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue. You can look it up either way. It's actually a Spanish dubbed film. It was done by George Grau, who was like the master of horror in Spain. But he does such a perfect job of making it so creepy. Because, I mean, it's a zombie movie. Of course, you're going to see weird zombie stuff, right?
Yeah.
But watching that movie is what gave me absolute terror of dead people and their death rattles. Because he did it so freaking well.
Yeah.
So if you really like the, like, creepy atmospheres, check that movie out. It's great. It also has a lot of hate to it, but then there's a lot of really good horror fans that are like, no, this is it.
Yeah.
This is better than, blah, blah. And I'll name all the big ones. But anyway, that's one. It was made in 1974. It's called Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, or you can also look it up by The Living Dead at Manchester Morgue.
All right. I'll check that out. Yeah, because there aren't too many directors that can pull that off, just that whole aesthetic. Because John Carpenter was just the whole package. Like he was,
he really was.
He was the director, writer. He made the music. So it just, John Carpenter when you see it and hear it.
That's true, and he's also like involved in the special effects. Like he's a perfectionist, so he makes those effects like just chef's kiss,
Yeah.
All right, so I was a bad host last week, and KKR was my first guest host, and I did not give him a chance to give his credentials. So as we come out, Jay, you want to tell the people where they can find you and what you got going on?
Follow me at JFunktastic on Twitter, on Twitch, twitch.tv/JFunktastic. And go check out our retro video game show that I do with Mr. Derek Diamond called Nerd Cave Retro. It's at Nerd Cave Retro on Twitter. Every week we talk about retro games. We talk about the gaming news for the week, video game history. So every week we review a retro game from the early days of the Nintendo up to the PS2 era. So if you're into video games, go check that out. And also I do another podcast called Open Micers, at Open Micers on Twitter and Instagram. And it's me and another comedian, Jacob Craig. And every single week we talk to different comedians, actors, musicians. I mean, we've talked to people like Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction. We've talked to Brian O'Halloran from Clerks. We've talked to Parker Lewis himself on the show. We've talked to so many different people on the show. Go check that out at Open Micers on Twitter.
All right, and you can find us on the Jesters Court. That works for Facebook, Twitch, not Twitch. Twitch is what you're watching now. Facebook, Patreon, and Twitter. And look for this episode. It'll be tomorrow night because I recently learned that I was releasing it too early. As an affiliate of Twitch, I'm not supposed to release on other platforms for 24 hours.
Shame on
I
you.
didn't know that.
It was pointed out to me by someone in our Discord server. So tomorrow night at 9 p.m., you can see this exclusive on Patreon for 1 week. And
Well, I'm glad you told me because I've been every time I do a show, I immediately export it to YouTube.
see, I didn't know either. But yeah, we won't be on next week because I will be doing my extra live stream.
But we're on the following weekend, and that's my big thing.
I was just getting to that. Thank you, Mom Thulu. The following weekend, I've got Mom Thulu and a friend of ours, Nefa Mel. The episode started out as Aloy from
Horizon
Zero Dawn.
Zero Dawn, yes.
Grown into the hate and the treatment of women in video games in general.
Yeah, not like women. Well, I mean, I guess we could talk about women gamers, but what we're going to be talking about is like
Characters.
Strong female characters getting the amount of hate that they do, and for misogynistic reasons. So that's what we're going to be talking about that. And I like how my own husband, he asked what Jay was doing. He said what he was doing, but he asked nothing of me.
Tom Thulu, do you have anything in the works right now?
Actually, I do. Thank you. And it's this show. But also you can catch me on Twitch TV /MomThulu, and you can also find me on YouTube at Badly Gaming Moms. I'm one half of that team. Of course, my other half had a baby, so she's not been really able to play any games lately. But we play games badly on that show when we just play games badly, okay? But I'm also going to be starting a campaign with Ash's Fall that is called Fuck Cancer. So we are going to be raising money for that charity so that hopefully we can, find a cure for cancer. Fuck cancer.
Awesome.
So that's awesome.
Yeah. So there, I am doing something there.
All right. Thank you, Jason, for coming on, and we will see
thanks.
everyone in 2 weeks.